Chairman, you can start the meeting. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's meeting of the Cabinet. During the live broadcast, members and officers are asked please to ensure that mobile phones are in silent mode and that microphones are switched off whilst not in use. Agenda item 1, member services, would you kindly report any apologies for absence?
Thank you. We have apologies from Councillor Mrs. Laws and Councillor Miss Scandlin.
Thank you very much. We appear to have an echo. Okay, we'll try now. No, that's much better. Thank you. Right, agenda item 2. We're being asked to approve the public minutes, which are on pages 3 to 6 of your agenda pack, as being a correct record of the meeting which took place on the 22nd of January 2024. May I ask any member who doesn't agree with the minutes to indicate that now? I see no one indicating. Therefore, the minutes are approved as a correct record and as they are now agreed. Do you mind if I sign in red? Okay. Thank you, Paul. Right, agenda item 3. There are no urgent items for consideration today. Agenda item 4 is to receive any declarations of interest under the local code of conduct or any interest under the code of conduct on planning matters in respect of any of the items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, please would you inform the meeting now? I see no hands raised. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 5 is the business plan for 2024-25, and that's to be found on pages 7 to 18 of the agenda. As this is in my name and Paul Mead's name, I'm the person who is meant to present this, but I feel a bit of a fraud in doing so because a great deal of the hard work in producing this in the readable format that it's in has been done by Councillor Tierney, together with the officers who work with Councillor Tierney. And I'll give credit to them now for producing, yet again, an improvement on the previous year in terms of the way in which it's put forward. What we have in the business plan is an explanation of what our corporate priorities are within communities, environment and economy. We also explain what we have as a priority in terms of us being a quality organisation, and that is that we fulfil our responsibilities effectively, transparently and sustainably. And finally, that we also have as a corporate priority, in a cross-cutting manner, the transformation agenda that we've got to ensure that the council will be cost-effective and fit for the future. We also make mention in the business plan that we have fulfilled the election pledge that we made to keep council tax under control to the extent that we're able to do. And I believe, and I've yet to see every single one of the other 317 local authorities, principal local authorities in England, but I believe we are the only council to have reduced our council tax so far this year. I'll finally get the confirmation on that in a week or two's time when every single council has reported. And we are certainly the council tax which has managed to reduce its council which has managed to reduce its council tax over the last 7 years by more than any other principal authority in the country. The business plan is there for everyone to read. As I say, thanks to Councillor Tierney and his team, it's in a much more readable format than we certainly had it a few years ago. And I imagine there's a limit to the number of improvements which can be made by Councillor Tierney, but every year he and his team manage to surprise me by making it even better than the year before. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Tierney, would you care to speak? No. The item is open for discussion. Would anyone care to say anything about the business plan? Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like to express my thanks to officers and Councillor Tierney and yourself. I do know that there's a lot of hard work gone in over the last few months to achieve this. So I will say congratulations to you all.
Thank you, Councillor. Mrs. French. Any other comments? Councillor Tierney.
Yeah, excuse my voice, please. I'm a little hoarse today. Not a little horse, but a little horse. Yeah, I'd just like to say it really is all down to officers. I can't take a great deal of credit, and thank you so much for all that hard work.
Thank you. Any other comment? No, there are no further speakers. Therefore, the recommendation is at page 8, and it is for Cabinet to consider and recommend to Council the approval of the final business plan for 2024-25. Those in favour, please show. That is agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed, members. Agenda item 6 is the budget and medium-term financial strategy, which is to be found on pages 29 to 82. This relates to the revised general fund budget and capital programme for 2024-5, and to consider and recommend to Council the general fund budget estimates. Do I have, first of all, I should just say a few words about it. We are going to have a full debate about this, I'm sure, at full council in 2 hours' time. So I won't say everything that I will say this afternoon. And I won't, in this meeting, go through this on a page-by-page basis. I will say, however, for this meeting, put on record my thanks, as ever, to Mark Saunders, our Chief Accountant, for the amount of work which has been put in this, as in every other year, and that is very much appreciated by all members. Also for Peter Catchpole, of course, as our Section 151 officer, and to Sean and the rest of the team, the finance team, for the large amount of work which goes into producing these figures every single year. And we have in the last year had quite a difficult financial year for a number of reasons. One of which is that inflation, the high levels of inflation finally fed through the system. We've had excessive temporary staff costs, particularly on the planning department side, and we continue to have excess costs for temporary accommodation under our homelessness obligations. And the second and third of those things are being addressed. We are seeking to reduce the temporary staff costs through further additional employment of individuals to fill vacant positions, and for the possibility of restructuring work which is done in order to ensure that we minimise the number of temporary staff. And we have taken a considerable amount of expenditure on board in purchasing almost, it'll be 30 properties just on, many of which will be used for temporary accommodation in order to reduce the amount of cost which we failed to be able to recover from central government. So various actions are being taken next year in order to address the problems that we've had this year. And as I say, the inflationary element, the high inflationary element, has now largely passed through the system and will be embedded in future years. I have to be very careful here. All council budgets which are put forward are balanced and have to be balanced in order to be legal. But we traditionally, well, those of us who are councillors traditionally talk about deficit and surplus budgets. Now, they are not technically deficit or surplus budgets, they're all balanced budgets. But when we talk about a surplus budget, we mean we've got a budget where we are talking about budgeting for a transfer to reserves. And when we talk about a deficit budget, we're talking about a transfer coming from our reserves. So in using those words, surplus budget and deficit budget, I give my apologies, especially to Mark Saunders, but it is something which I think all councillors understand as a concept. And our position is that we are proposing to full council this afternoon that we have a surplus budget this year in the amount of £2,515. And that is a considerable improvement on the figures which were produced for Cabinet in December, when we were projecting a deficit of £539,091, and it was those numbers which were presented to overview and scrutiny, where a robust challenge was given and various explanations were given at the same time. We have worked on the assumption, we've changed our assumption about council tax a year ago, so that now we are assuming a flat rate council tax. That's not a 0% council tax change. It is an assumption that the total amount of council tax that we take from our residents will stay the same every year. Now, that's just an assumption which is made for the purposes of the medium-term financial strategy and for each year within that. However, it does give us some flexibility. Now, had we continued with that in the financial year 24-5, there would have been a decrease in our share of the council tax by 1.62%, but it would have led to a deficit budget. My pardon, Mark. It would have led to a deficit budget of £114,000. Now, despite the fact that we've got more than £1.8 million in our budget equalisation reserve, I felt uneasy about suggesting that we go forward with a deficit budget, which is why the council tax will be set at a level sufficient to have, and just sufficient to have, a surplus budget. And even that still will involve a decrease in the council tax, but in this case only by 0.18%. But every penny counts in many ways, and we are talking about public money at the end of the day. And there is some moral issue about not taking more from the public than we actually need to do to balance the books. And that is what we are doing in this particular case. And I believe that we have shown, and we should continue to show, that we fulfill the election promise that we make, that we will only take the amount of council tax that we need to take. And as I say, I think that we will end up being really, if not right at the top of the list, then very close to it from the 318 principal councils in England, so far as our council tax take and change is in the year 24-25. Having said all of that, there are challenges ahead. We've got the challenges of transformation, which are going to be necessary in order to continue to push through cost efficiency and savings and rationalisation of the work that we do. And there will undoubtedly be some difficult decisions that we'll have to make. Additionally, we have the challenge of our capital programme and the way in which that capital programme will be funded and the extent to which the capital programme will be able to be implemented. So we do have some challenges ahead of us, but we are in a far, far stronger position than very many other councils around the country. And that's thanks to many years of prudence on the part of councillors and good guidance on behalf of the officers in this council. So we are in a strong position, a much stronger position than most other authorities, but we need to continue to be prudent and we need to continue to ensure that we are in that strong position so that we're able to weather any difficulties that there are ahead. Right, I'll leave it at that. I could say a lot more at this afternoon's meeting. May I ask if I may have a seconder, please? Councillor Mrs. French, would you care to say anything? Any comments from any members, please? No comments from members at this stage? Okay. So, if there are no speakers, the recommendations are set out on pages 30 and 31, requesting the Cabinet approve the recommendation 1 and the recommendation recommend to Council recommendations 2 to 11. Is this agreed? Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you all very much indeed. Agenda item 7 is the revised grant decision-making process for the 2024-25 SPF investment in business project and REPF business growth grants project, which is found on pages 83 to 86 of our agenda. UK SPF is the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, sorry. I'll now ask Councillor Benny to propose this report. Councillor Benny.
Thank you, Chairman. I present this paper to Cabinet looking for your recommendation to change the mechanism in the decision-making process for the Council to operate the grant schemes. At the Cabinet meeting of the 20th of February 2023, members recommended the Placement Development Board and Fenland Economic Growth Team will decide who receives the grants. But as of January 2024, the Place Development Board is no longer operational and we need a new method for assessing grant applications. The proposed new method will be 3 outside bodies, Investment in Business Project, Cambridgeshire Chamber of Commerce, Rural England Business Growth Grants Projects, Cambridgeshire ACRE, Business Startup Early Stage Business Projects, the Growth Hub of the Combined Authority. These outside bodies will bring the business expertise needed to assess the applications, and Fenland's Economic Growth Team, along with the grant officer, will make the final decisions based on the responses received. There will also remain an appeal mechanism for unsuccessful applicants that will be dealt with by officers who have had no prior involvement in the grant decision making. I'll take any questions if members have any.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Before questions, may I ask for a seconder, please? Councillor Miss Hoy, thank you very much indeed. Now open this matter, open the subject to debate or questions. Any members with any questions or comments? None. You've got away very lightly, Ian. Well done. Since there are no speakers, the recommendation is at page 83 in our pack and requests the Cabinet consider and agree a replacement to the North Cambridgeshire Place Development Board in the UK Shared Prosperity Fund grant making decision process. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 8 is the FDC transport policy, which is to be found on pages 87 to 92 of your agenda pack, and relates to a draft transport policy that will return to Cabinet for discussion and adoption during 2024-25. I'll now ask Councillor Seaton to propose the report.
Thank you, Chairman. This report relates to the development of a Fenland transport policy. It is seeking support on the principle of writing a draft strategy and agreement to bringing a draft document of this nature back to Cabinet for approval in future. And so members are requested to approve the development of a draft transport policy that will come back to the Cabinet for discussion and adoption during the financial year 2024. The reason behind wanting to develop a Fenland District Council transport policy is to bring together the strategies we already have on walking, cycling and mobility, and also on the railways, and to bring it under the overall umbrella of the Fenland District Council transport policy. Now, this doesn't mean we are going to rewrite any strategies already written, and it doesn't mean that we'll be bringing in any consultants to provide this draft policy. It will be done in-house. It will not take the transport team away from their obviously very important duties, and it will work in with their working week. There are two reasons for doing this, important reasons. One is that I don't believe that the Fenland District Council has a strong enough voice within either county or the combined authority transport departments. Secondly, I think we are all well aware that the transport and infrastructure within Fenland is dire, and could become even worse should the proposed incinerator go forward, which will make our fractured infrastructure even worse. This will give us, I believe, a stronger voice to put forward what Fenland District Council requires and needs within our own area. And at the moment, there are some parts of the LTCP that we agree with, and there are many parts that we disagree with. We do have and will continue to have car usage in this area because of the lack of services supplied throughout Fenland. So this is the reason that I have put forward this proposal to have this policy, and I hope that the members of the Cabinet will support this draft policy. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mrs. French, thank you very much indeed. The item is now open for discussion. Would anyone care to make any comments or ask any questions? No, I think we all agree with you, Chris, on what you were saying. Since there aren't any speakers, the recommendation is at page 87 and asks the Cabinet approves the development of a draft transport policy that will come back to Cabinet for discussion and adoption during the financial year 2024-25. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 9 is the renewal of building control services, which is on pages 93 to 96. And this relates to the renewal of our contract with CNC, or the proposed renewal of our contract with CNC in relation to the provision of building control services. This would have been presented by Councillor Mrs. Laws, who unfortunately isn't with us today, and our thoughts are with her, and hope that she will be back fighting fit in the very near future. So in her absence, I will just say a few words. Sorry, Councillor Murphy, did you weren't planning to say something on this, were you? Oh, I thought for a second you were going to volunteer to speak on it, which would be very nice indeed. Okay, well, in the absence of Councillor Laws, then just a very brief history on this would be helpful, as is seen from the report. In 2014, full council decided to enter into the CNC partnership for the provision of building control services. And that partnership is made up of ourselves, Kings Lynn and West Norfolk District Council, Borough Council, Norwich City Council, Broadland District Council, and it's hosted by South Norfolk District Council. And in 2014, the agreement, the proposal represented at that time a £52,000 per annum saving on our then in-house team, which included £15,000 per annum income from CNC occupying office space at the boathouse. Now, many of the reasons set out in the 2014 report are still relevant today in terms of the cost of maintaining an in-house team, the recruitment and workforce planning challenges in relation to maintaining qualified surveyors, and the uncertainty arising from competition from approved inspectors and the fact that legally we can't make a profit from certain building control services and that we must maintain a break-even period over a 3-year period. Now, in 2014, Council agreed it would cost £60,000 per annum to enter into the partnership, which at that time represented a saving of £52,000 per annum. Now, the Council currently pays, some 10 years later, we pay £54,108. Therefore, costs have reduced by almost 10% over the period of the contract, and therefore this represents an even greater saving than originally anticipated. Now, CNC still occupies space at the boathouse, albeit last year they recently downsized their office space, but it still represents £10,000 per annum of income from the original £15,000 to the council. And the offices that CNC vacated have, I have to say, been relet already. Now, Councillor Laws attends the CNC board with fellow councillors from the respective councils to oversee the financial and the regulatory aspects of the operation of the partnership on a quarterly basis. Alternative options to this have been considered, but none of these provide the current benefits of being part of the CNC partnership, as is set out in the report. And I therefore propose that we agree the recommendation, which is for members to agree the renewal of the contract for CNC to deliver building control services on behalf of Fenland District Council. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Miss Hoy, thank you very much indeed. The item is open for discussion. Any comments or questions from any members, please? None, and I'm grateful to answer any technical questions because I think I might struggle with technical questions on Councillor Law's area of responsibility. I will therefore put this to the vote. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 10 are constitutional amendments, which are listed on pages 97 to 106 of your agenda pack. I'll very briefly go through these. Recommendation 1 and 2 update the financial limits for delegated authority. These financial limits have remained unchanged for many years, and this is to bring those limits back to sensible figures. Recommendation 3 allows for a one-off nomination of alternative nominees for outside bodies where that is permitted. And recommendations 4 and 5 add, where there are references to the corporate management team, they add reference to our assistant directors following the organisational change which was implemented 14 months ago and which has been working extremely well. So those are, in summary, the changes to the Constitution which are proposed. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Tierney, thank you very much indeed. Item is open for discussion. anyone who may care to ask any questions or to make any comments? I see no speakers. So the recommendations are set out on pages 97 to 98 and are for Cabinet to recommend for approval by full council the changes to the Constitution as set out in the report. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item 11 is on pages 107 to 108 of your agenda pack and is the update in relation to High Street Wisbech. Councillor Seaton, please may I invite you to propose this report.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the monthly update on the High Street Wisbech. Firstly, 24 High Street, work in progress. Piling is completed on the site and the base slab is either has been already laid or is shortly to be laid. And progress is expected to accelerate now that the challenging groundworks have been completed. 1112 High Street Wisbech. As colleagues have read, the council has received a report from a consultant regarding potential options for 1112 High Street. The National Lorratage Heritage Fund requested that the council commission this report to give us guidance as to what would be appropriate on this site. As the report highlights, in terms of building, either a 3 or a 4-storey building is suitable in this conservation area. A third, less attractive option is also considered within the report. The report does not consider costs, only the impact of building in the historic centre of Wisbech. To allow Cabinet to consider further options, I would like to have options assessed for cost in order that Cabinet has set up to date for costs of any options that Cabinet seem appropriate. This will then allow future decisions making using the necessary information regarding cost. And this work will also allow the council to open more meaningful discussions with potential funding partners, including discussing any grant with the National Lottery Heritage Fund. And I would point out that both Simon Mason and Philip Hughes had a meeting with the Lottery Fund 2 weeks ago. And there has been a change of personnel within there, and it has been far more positive with the new person there that they were having the meeting with. And I should say that we are hoping to get some response from them very shortly. And I think there's another contact with them very, very shortly, probably next week. But as soon as we get more information, then I can pass it back to Cabinet. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Seaton. May I have a seconder for this agenda item, please? Councillor Mrs. French, thank you very much indeed. I'll open this up to members. If anyone has any questions or comments to make, please indicate. I see no one indicating. Thank you very much indeed. The recommendation is set out on page 107 of the agenda pack, and it is for Cabinet to note the progress in relation to the building of 24 High Street and notes the actions, including costs, regarding 11 to 12 High Street. Is this agreed? Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. The report is duly noted. Agenda item 12 is the acceptance of capital funding for the provision of domestic food waste services, which is a report to be found on pages 109 to 116 of the agenda pack. Councillor Murphy, please may I invite you to propose this report. Murphy, please use your microphone.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is to consider the acceptance of funding provided by DEFRA for the collection of weekly food waste services from March 2026. Will £826,815 be sufficient for our requirements? The answer to me is no, as we are a rural area which DEFRA doesn't agree with. We will require extra small food waste bins. We would need vehicles, small vehicles to collect it, approximately 48,000 internal food waste caddies, 49,000 external caddies, and 300 communal bins to carry out this task. Wales have already gone through this process, and now the government is rolling it out all over England. So we will have to follow their reports. This is why we will accept the amount offered whilst starting an appeals process for further capital funding for what we deem is the deficit to carry out the main new services to our highly acceptable standard. We will be purchasing all the equipment together with RECAP partners to secure beneficial pricing and bulk buying. This is an act of Parliament, the Environment Act 2021, which is including mandatory weekly collected of food waste from domestic properties. We have been told that the net revenue costs will be covered through new burdens formula, which appeals process. FDC is the authority for waste collection responsibilities, and CCC is the waste disposal authority. The recommendations I'll read out after the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. I will second this motion. I will emphasise that we are obliged, if we wish to accept any money from the central government at all to fulfil our new statutory responsibilities, if we're to receive any capital money, we were obliged to respond positively to the offer that was made to us no later than the 1st of March. So that is what we are proposing to do here today, even though we are at the same time saying that amount of money isn't sufficient for us. And I believe government actually has withdrawn that suggested figure, accepting that it may be that a different figure may be appropriate for us. But even then, I'm not confident that we'll be given the money that we want. But then we would not be alone in the country, because right across the country, local collection authorities are saying that the amount of capital which has been offered to them in order to fulfil the legal obligation placed upon them by central government is insufficient. So this is something that we will be following up very forcibly indeed. But at this stage, if we want any money at all, we must accept at least the offer which they originally made to us, so that that's a start of a process, but it doesn't commit us to only accepting that amount of money. Additionally, as Councillor Murphy said, we also have the potential of definite revenue implications on this, the revenue costs which will be involved. And we are told that new burdens funding will become available to us. But again, this is something we're going to have to be very alert to, because the danger is that the amount of new burdens funding which is made available to us will not be sufficient to cover the actual costs that we've got. So again, that's another potential battle that we've got to face. And all of this to be done in a very short space of time, really, considering the amount of capital expenditure which is involved in all of this. But in terms of what we now have as a decision which we now need to make in order to accept a figure which is more than 500,000 and therefore under the Constitution has to be done by Cabinet, I'm more than happy to second this motion. Right, any comments or questions? Councillor, Mrs. French.
Thank you, Leader. Interestingly enough, this was discussed on Politics East yesterday, and the leader of South Norfolk was on there, and he certainly said the money offered was not going to be enough. He was talking about the region of millions. So I think we've got to be very, very careful that, you know, we're not going to be hit with something that's going to cost this council a fortune.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. French. In fact, we've got no choice but to go ahead with it. It's a matter of negotiating as best we can to ensure that we are, as we're meant to be, we are fully funded for the capital changes which are meant to take place and the revenue changes. Councillor Miss Hoy.
Yeah, obviously I understand that we have to accept this money, and it's not, I'm not arguing against that, and obviously I support that, but I just think we need to be making, I'm sure Councillor Murphy has, but I do think we need to be making really strong representations to government about this, because I just think it's going to be a very, very unpopular policy. People having little bins that, I mean, I've seen it in other areas that just blow all around the road, you know, rubbish everywhere, rats everywhere. People are just going to be really unhappy, and they're going to blame Fenland for it. And at the moment, I think our waste service is absolutely exemplary. I think the fact that we don't hear anything about our waste service is actually a really good thing. It's because it is so good. And we potentially turn our best, or literally our best thing, into potentially our worst thing overnight, because of what the government has done now. I don't know if they probably won't listen to us. I don't doubt they will, but at least we should try, because I just think this is going to be really, really bad news.
Thank you for that, Sam. The one thing I would say is I don't agree that it would become our worst thing, because we've got some extremely good officers who will manage to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. Any other comments from any members? So the recommendations are set out on pages 109 to 110, and for Cabinet to agree recommendations 3.1 to 3.6. Councillor Murphy, did you say you wanted to read out those for the sake of those individuals who are listening in? Yeah, it would be helpful for those who are listening in. Sorry, Councillor Murphy, if you put your microphone on, please.
Shall I start again? Members consider and accept this funding offered towards the necessary capital expenditure for these service changes, acknowledging that there are conditions placed upon the funding and the use of equipment purchased. 3.2, to delegate the sign off of the financial, legal and all other arrangements to the council's section 151 officer in consultation with the finance portfolio holder. 3.3, members to note that at this point, confirmation of the final funding amount has not been forthcoming from DEFRA. It is expected that that first statement of the funding will be in the region of £826,815. 3.4, to delegate to the finance portfolio holder at section 151 officer the ability to accept future capital and revenue allocations in regard to the introduction of the food waste service and enter into any associated agreements. 3.5, members to note that given the number of authorities going to market to for these vehicles and materials at one time, that there is the risk that the funding provided by DEFRA does not completely cover the costs of transitioning it to this additional statutory waste service. 3.6, members to note that the new burdens doctrine will be applied to the net cost of transitioning and to the provision of a new service from March 2026.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Those in favour, please show. That's agreed unanimously. Thank you all very much indeed. Agenda item 13 is the draft 6-month Cabinet Forward Plan, which is to be found on pages 117 to 118 of your agenda pack. Are there any questions or comments on that? Councillor Miss Hoy.
Yeah, just a quick one about process, really. I don't think we should have agenda items appear on the agenda without the cabinet members knowing about them or approving of them, rather than they shouldn't just appear on agendas. So I would like to, obviously, don't want to have to necessarily highlight things now, but if we could perhaps review the agenda, and if there is any oversights on there, correct them before next meeting.
Thank you very much indeed for that. It is a matter for Cabinet as a whole, of course, to decide what is on the agenda. In fact, that's the whole purpose of what we're doing now. But I'm sure that officers will have heard, and I have heard, the comments that you've made. Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you. There's nothing on this, but I hope to bring a paper to you with regard to the car parks that Finland own with regard to upgrading the signage.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm not really looking forward to that, but it's certainly something which we need to have a debate on.
We have to discuss it.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other comments? Councillor Murphy, please turn your microphone off, if you don't mind. Thank you very much. No other comments from any members? Fine. So the forward plan is noted for information, and this marks the end of the meeting. I declare this meeting closed. The next meeting of Cabinet is scheduled to take place at 4 p.m. on the 18th of March 2024. Thank you for your attendance.